Tu norėjai, tai kodėl prašyk? Kągi, jeigu taip jau gaunasi, kad Lukas bus pristatytas daugiau formaliai ir ta garbė, o šiuo atveju iš tikrųjų garbė. Sorry, I have a notice that you... So it's really an honor for me to give the floor to Louk Hulsman because, you know, your participation has raised the level of our seminar. At least we feel that your participation is something very important for us, and most of us were really eager, looking forward to this moment that you will give your speech to us. So, please.
Thank you. I'm very glad to be here. I said that already, and I've learned a lot in those 2 days that we have been now together, and so I profoundly enjoyed that. Now, I thought that in all those discussions we had about change of criminal justice and of other instruments to try to make more peace and more interesting development in our societies, I thought, and I had talked about that with you both, that it could be interesting to give an analysis of the past and to look to the future. And now there was a little error in the title because I think in Holland between 55 and 75 we realized a very important change in criminal justice, and that it could be interesting to look at that process, a process in 20 years in which we brought back the usual level of imprisonment which was in the interbellum between the two world wars in many countries in Europe, in England and in France and in Holland too, about 60 persons in prison on the 100,000 inhabitants. And it was also so in Holland. And then I take 55 because at 55 we had 55 persons on 100,000 in prison. And then in a period of 20 years, and most of the effects were in the last 10 years of those 20 years, we brought that figure back to 18. So that was not a bad achievement. And you know that now it's one of the higher prison figures again in Europe, because now it is 124. And in a few years, because what the measures they took will have effect in a few years, and then soon we will reach the Lithuanian measure if we do not do something. And now I wanted to talk a little bit, how was it possible, what was the process in which that prison population was brought back and could have been, if not certain things happened, brought still further back. And I think that was the interesting thing what I heard up till now on how you brought it back here in Lithuania and in other countries. There was a lot of talk, mainly about official institutions who played a role there. And I think that was what was the case in Holland, that was that civil society, that a mobilization of civil society was such an interesting aspect in bringing it back. And before I put out now a certain number of that sort of issues, what happened, I want to say, I want nevertheless to react also a little bit on an earlier question of you. Is there a criminological truth? And before I say if there is a criminological truth, I want also to say one word about criminology in law education and also in the general education. I think that it is very useful to have criminology in the university programs and certainly also in the education of lawyers, but under two conditions. In the first place, I do not think that it is that you could say that criminology is the most important sector of the social sciences which should be represented in a university, in a law faculty. In a law faculty, you should have social science, and one of those social sciences could be criminology, but another social science could be sociology of law, and another social science could be anthropology of law. So we should not try to make criminology the only or most important of those social sciences in a law faculty. But there should be a lot of social science in the law faculty so that lawyers are anyway raised and educated in a way that they understand that the normative science of law does not learn them anything about the reality of life in which it should play a role. So that's the first thing. A second thing is that criminology is such a sort of, under the name of criminology, the most diverse activities in social science are going on. And they are very different in different countries and in different universities. And so then you have to make a sort of choice. So I would say, yes, there is a criminological truth, but there is only a criminological truth if, and it is only a social science form of truth, but when criminology is obedient to the epistemological norms of doing the work. And you know that I think that when you use the concept of crime, you are not doing that. So I think criminology can also only be a serious social science when it abandons the concept of crime. And by using that concept of crime, completely made itself subservient to the ideas, the normative ideas of a legislation which exists there and which has been formed in centuries before, long before all we are living here, and makes itself subservient to that body of legal dispositions. So, after that background, I come now to my process of change. So, what was making it possible, I think, in Holland to change in such a time, in such a deep way, the number of prisoners? In the first place, there were a certain number of aspects which were specific to criminal law in Holland. And when I say criminal law, I mean also criminal procedure, actually. And one of the things was that Holland had not a legality principle, no obligation for public prosecutors to prosecute, but the opportunity principle. There was a freedom for public prosecutors to prosecute or not. And in that period, I'm talking about those public prosecutors started to develop the idea that they should only prosecute when it was good for something. And they individualized that. So that they were really looking at the case, in not everybody, but it became nevertheless a principle that they should do that, if something better was the consequence of going now further still in that criminal justice system as you had done already. Because very often actually you had had already all sorts of things which happened.